G'day, Jeff. Welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. Great to have you back.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. Good to be here.
Here, just not long ago, episode 1102, and you're back again. So thank you for joining us again. I feel like we got into some depth last time about meditative practices, particularly your approach and the science and benefits that you've experienced personally, but also witnessed as well in others from meditative practices. So I want to get into this topic even deeper today. So thanks for coming back on.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Talk to me, Jeff, about you just mentioned, and I think I'm curious. What philosophy around meditation? When you say philosophy as it relates to meditation, what are we talking about?
Well, there's so many philosophical questions that come up with integrating a meditative practice. One of my old meditation teachers, he used to have me work on memorizing the Tao Te Ching. And are you familiar with this book?
I've heard of it. I'm not really familiar with it, I wouldn't say.
Okay. So the Tao Te Ching is a very well-known book on meditative style philosophy and virtue. It's the most sold book on the planet, only second to the Bible. And I've heard that there's over 14,000 translations of it, which seems kind of crazy, but it's been around for a long time. And basically what it is it's 81 sayings talking about virtue and life applications and different things that you can do to integrate some of the philosophies of meditation and that virtuous style of life. And so, what one of um, my old meditation teachers, he was having me go through, memorize the Tao Te Ching and say it every day. And I did this for 12 years. And it's still something that I see new depths in all of the time. It's the whole story behind the Tao Te Ching. It was written by Lao Tzu, and he was taken in by an emperor who was having him come in and advise him on certain situations that would come up, and kind of use him as a go-to guy to just seek advice from. Well, after a while, Lao Tzu couldn't handle being in the city, and he wanted to go be out in the woods and just kind of be on his own and be more peaceful and meditate and get back to nature. Well, one day he decided to leave, and he gets, half a day away, and the emperor is like, I still have a lot of questions I need to ask him. And he sends his troops out to go find him. And Lao Tzu's held up by the river, and he can't get across. He's waiting until the morning to get to the other side. And his troops come and they say, "Hey, the emperor still needs you. He's got a lot of questions to ask." And he says, "I will write down everything he needs to know." And in one night, he stayed up all night and wrote the 81 sayings of the Tao Te Ching. And again, this is a story. There's no evidence behind this is how it actually happened. But he brought this back to the emperor, and these 81 sayings were formed and now is known as the Tao Te Ching. And in this, if you're interested in the meditative philosophy, this is a great book to check out.
Okay.
There's a lot of valuable life lessons in there. And, you know, one of, a famous line, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, is one of the lines in the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah.
And it tells you and it associates kind of how you integrate a meditative practice into your life. Because so many times when I've talked with students who have tried meditation, or I'm working with somebody who's taking on the practice, they'll feel like, it's such a big thing. I'm not going to get good for, it's going to take a lifetime to really master this. And it just seems like such a vast thing to take on. Well, remember, you're not trying to think about where you want to be in 5 years or 10 years or when you're going to master the practice. It's all the benefit that you get by following the journey. And this is the whole idea, is that you take it in small increments and you just do that. What is your goal today? When are you doing your ritual practice? How are you activating some of these active practices into your day and integrating some of these philosophical sayings into your life, so
Mm.
you deepen your awareness and find that stronger connection with who you are, to add more depth to your practice. And that's kind of one of the ways that we use the philosophy to integrate into what we're doing.
So it's more about the integration of philosophy into the practice itself to help speed up, maybe even, or evolve that level of self-awareness through those sayings, or whatever it might be.
It's using the philosophy to open up your mind to more possibilities.
Mm.
So many times we go through life and we have these things ingrained in us through our upbringing, through our parents, through our grandparents, that this is the way this is the way this is. And we get these rules and we get these guidelines that tell us the way certain things are, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's anytime we put a limitation on something or we put a rule on something, a lot of times it closes us off to many of the possibilities that could happen. By studying the philosophy, it helps us to open up our mind to not have so many walls and not so many rules, but to be more open and more accepting to whatever energies, whatever possibilities come our way in life, which
Mm.
is part of the whole idea of yielding and the idea of being in that natural state of flow. And that's one of the things that meditation helps us do.
Yeah, I like it. I think the idea, and I'll get that book too. I'll stick a link in the show notes. The Dao Di Ching. That's spelled Taote Ching, Ching. Is that
Yes.
right? But pronounced Dao
Yes.
Di Ching.
Tao Te Ching. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll stick the link in the show notes. But I was just reflecting when you were talking about that. I was listening to my coach this morning, and a part of a journaling exercise is just to do these, like answer these questions every week about, your energy levels, or how you felt, how intentful you were, your health activities, whatever it might be. But it's just these bunch of questions that you just ask yourself and you just respond. You don't take it too seriously, which I think a lot of people might try to do initially, but just trying to answer them. And it's really, as he sort of explained, it's about doing it consistently, asking yourself those questions consistently makes you think. And that helps build this level of, a higher level of self-awareness. And with that, then you can become more intentful and purposeful down the track. It just builds on itself. And so you start to think about it unconsciously, and that then starts to depict your behaviors and, like you said, your flow in life a bit more gracefully, I suppose.
Yes, very much. And that kind of comes into the practice, whether it's you're doing a sitting practice, a standing practice, or a movement meditation practice, whatever it is, that repetition and that consistency eventually becomes easier and easier to find that center place, to find that place where it's taking your distraction and coming back to that present state of awareness, which is really where all the beauty in life is in that
Mm,
present moment.
mm,
Anytime you're anticipating the future or thinking about the past, you're letting those present moments tick by. That really is where all the joy is at, right? So it's
yeah,
using this practice to help us stay connected with that present moment.
yeah, I like it. How do you find, I mean, again, probably delving in here a little bit, the way the world is right now and society's set up, and generally, I'll say on a general front, how people go about their day-to-day lives in relation to how much time they give themselves to just think and be present with the mind. How do you find that in society today, and what do you feel the effects of that are?
I believe that there's not enough of that going on in today's society. I can't tell you, it's pretty rare when you walk down the street and see somebody not tethered to their phone. You
Mm,
know, there's so many things going on in our day-to-day lives that very few people, and I would be interested to know what the actual percentage is, but how many people actually take a half an hour a day or an hour a day and disconnect from technology and disconnect from outside distractions, even if it's not meditation, even if it's just going for a jog, if it's doing something where you disconnect and just kind of look internally at yourself. It's not too common. You know, I go to the gym and work out, and 90% of the people in the gym are listening to their headsets while they work out. And while I think that's great, you know, you listen to a podcast, you learn something. But again, while you're doing something positive for yourself, you're you're not looking inside.
mm,
You're listening to something, you're learning something, which is great. But when do you take that time, other than when you're sleeping, where you disengage and you just kind of listen to the thoughts in your mind and you try to connect with your heart and
mm,
kind of see how you really feel? You know, one of my meditation teachers, he always used to say, you know, everybody's walking around with a mask on. And so often you see this, you go out in today's society and you don't want to express your feelings, or maybe you want to kind of hide something that you're saying and don't want to hurt somebody's feelings or whatever it is. And you're kind of wearing this mask because you're not being 100% truthful throughout the day. Well, if we do this so often, eventually we get to the point where you look at yourself in the mirror and you're still wearing that mask. You know, you want to have that time by cultivating this practice to be able to reconnect with what's true to yourself so you never lose that root, if you will, of who you are.
mm. Very, yeah, very true. And I can't agree more. And I'm guilty. I'm one of those guys that love consuming motivational content or just stuff that I'm interested in, podcasts, etc. And I'll find that, if I've got a time in the car or in the gym, I'll be, I plug in. And I've been through a process before. I thought, no, I just got to switch off that. And it did feel good. And it's just a reminder for me to go back to that. Like I often jump into the gym and I'll turn on the radio, sometimes some music, which is great. But I have found recently, just by not listening to the podcast while I'm preparing dinner or doing the gym, that yeah, I'm more connected. I'm thinking about me and internally and how I'm feeling and thoughts and all that sort of thing, which I think is very, very powerful. And I don't believe we have an environment that's conducive to allowing that, because we have, you know, again, I'd love your thoughts on this, but I think that the regular Joe, we have this, we have to get up, we have to take care of the kids, we have to go to work, we have to do all this thing, and then we're influenced by this consumerism society that we live in to, watch TV, listen to podcasts, jump on eBay, shop, buy more things, try and have more things, and it just takes us away from living more fundamentally. And I think you just touched on a really good point, which I believe is hard, and it's hard for me too. I think I'm getting there, but to live really, and this word sounds a bit cheesy, but live authentically. I think when you can live comfortably within your skin without that mask, you actually feel a level of freedom, first of all, but fulfillment and happiness more so as well through that. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree. You know, I listen to a lot of podcasts myself. I love to, you know, keep my mind thinking, you know, and getting new ideas in my head. However, if you're always wearing that mask and you're never disconnecting and you're never dealing with those feelings inside and making that connection, what happens is a stressor will come up, or a conflict will come up.
Yeah.
And because you're not resolved of the things that are inside you, that's how you're going to express yourself. If you're content and you're at peace within yourself, then even when you're frustrated, you're going to be frustrated from a peaceful state. But if you're frustrated from a confused state or an aggravated state, it can
Mm,
cause a lot more problems.
mm,
And so by being able to come back to who you are and find that peace within yourself, you can approach the world with a peaceful lens. And no matter what happens, be in a better state of mind and put more positive energy out there with anything you're doing.
mm. Yeah. 100%. And what are your thoughts on this idea? Because I know what a lot of people are saying, well, that's nice, but when do you get actually the time to think? When do you get the time to meditate? That's probably a common objection you would hear, I
Yeah.
assume.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that? And how do you feel that actually you are better off by sacrificing time for meditation and time for thought, as far as your productivity and efficiency goes?
I think when you're at a peaceful state and your mind is calm, you're going to be more productive every time over than when you're distracted. And
Yeah.
meditation helps us find that place of focus. When it comes to time, I think that you really can't have the time not to do it. You know, the Dalai Lama once said everybody should meditate for 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, then you should meditate for an hour.
Hmm.
I love that saying in that everybody should invest this time in themselves. You know, 20 minutes a day is not much. And the nice thing about doing a meditative practice is while you have that ritual practice that might be 20 minutes, there's a lot of active practices that you can integrate into your day in as little as 60 seconds or 2 minutes. And they can be done when you're walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store. And if you incorporate some of these things into your day to day lifestyle and now make your meditative practice a way of life and less of a hobby that you do once in a while, now there's really not a day that goes by when there isn't time. You know, you're always just making it part of who you are. And you'll find that your productivity, your creativity, your focus, all of those things will improve by integrating this into your life.
Do you find that when people go through this process, um, I imagine you do, but naturally stress comes down, anxiety comes down. Um, do you find, like, I just sort of looking at my own experience, you start to focus on what's really important rather than all that stuff that's not really important? Because I think a lot of the stresses in life that we have right now, it's us living into these external demands that are put onto us, and then we go out there and live our day, and we have all this stress. But a lot of those things are little things that really have no significance to the bigger picture of our lives. And through a meditation process where we're more clear with our thoughts, we can actually rule out some of those things and really focus on the major things. And that's where I find productivity improves, and our stress levels decrease, because productivity improves because we're not focused on all those little things that are insignificant, and our stress levels decrease because all those little insignificant things actually don't have a great impact on the quality of our life.
Yes, and I think one of the things that helps us with that point is that with meditation, it improves our awareness. And by increasing our awareness, we see when these distractions take us off track before they start gaining too much momentum. Because it's difficult if you start getting in an argument with somebody and you get to the point where you're exhausted and you're just a little bit irate, it's hard to turn back down and get to a peaceful state again.
Yeah.
But if you notice as soon as somebody unsettles you that, hey, that's going down a negative path, it's a lot easier to adjust that and change to a more positive direction before it starts gaining too much negative momentum. And it works in our own interpersonal conflicts, it works in our conversations, it works in anything that we do. And so having that increased awareness helps us with our physical awareness, our mental awareness, our emotional states, and just so many different ways that can be applied.
Mm. Mm. Do you find yourself, because I mean, you come across just on the video call here, quite relaxed, composed, like almost there's nothing that bothers you, I suppose, just looking in. Um, how do you find people take that? You know, with because you've been doing this for many, many years, and you have that presence about you. Do you find people approach you in a different manner because of that presence, or this is kind of a personal
I think,
question?
yeah, I think people appreciate that when you're in an interaction with them, that you're 100% present and
Yeah.
paying attention and really listening to what they are saying and how they're feeling and paying attention to their body language and their facial expressions and their tone of voice and all of those things. Because I experience this all the time. You'll be talking to people and they'll be looking at their phone and they'll be looking off in the distance, and there feels like there's a blank look going on in their head.
Mm.
And I think that a lot of times people get used to that and they think that's just the way it's supposed to be. But for myself, if I'm going to spend quality time with somebody, I want it to be quality present moment time where there is that kind of deeper level connection there. And I feel like
Mm.
having a meditative practice really helps you be a little bit more sensitive to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see that, talking with you. And I know my mind still goes in different places when I'm having interviews. So often I'm writing down notes and putting things down. But I can see you're quite focused and present in the moment. How do you find, and this is maybe a question again, just about your schedule, but how do you prioritize your schedule so that when you have, something on, you're focused on that and you're not taken elsewhere? Are there any tricks or hacks that you have that help you do that better, other than your meditative practices?
So are you asking me when I have time to fit my meditation in?
No, no. So how do you schedule your day? Because right now you're in an interview, you've got no distractions, you're focused on this. But every day you've probably got different things that you have to do, whether it's an interview's kind of easy because we're face to face, we're in a conversation here. But just when you've got day-to-day activities and tasks and projects that you're working on, how do you prioritize your day so you're not distracted by all the other things happening in your life? Do you have any tools that you use to help you stay focused and on point?
You know, I I just have a system. I follow my calendar. I set appointments. I try not to double book things. I try
Yeah.
to have where when I have time set for one thing, I can focus on that one thing and get it done and just chip away one thing at a time. If you think about, I've got three different businesses that I'm running right now, and if I tried to think about all the stuff that I have to do, I would be lost. I mean, there's always 150 things that I could be doing. And so I think you take that one step at a time and do your best on it and be present there and that's just chipping away
Okay,
at it,
well
I guess.
that's a really relevant point. I guess there's a lot of people out there that have businesses or whatever. Everyone's busy. You don't get overwhelmed by all the things that you look at your three different businesses and go, geez, I've got to do that, I've got to do that, got to do that. You don't feel overwhelmed. You just go, okay, well, let's just focus on one thing I can do for that, and just get
Yeah.
that done. And then I'll move to the next one without being overwhelmed by everything.
I think that everybody gets distracted and everybody gets overwhelmed sometimes. And,
Mm,
it's never life is perfect. However, I think that doing the meditative arts for so many years, when I start feeling that way, it's easier to bring myself back to focus and find that center. And I don't spend too much time off in those distractions.
hmm Do you ever have thoughts when you're sort of stepping back and you're going, okay, I'm not getting these things done? Do you have feelings like, okay, if I don't get them done, it's going to result in lesser outcomes that aren't favorable to the business or the people that I work with?
Sure. Yeah, there's always things that are that need to be prioritized and feel like uh they're have tos, you have to get them
Yeah,
done.
yeah,
But those are the things that you focus on first, those
yeah.
are the things that you knock off the plate before you get to
hmm
all the little busy things that you got to do.
Yeah. Good stuff. Talk to me about the five regulations there, Jeff. We sort of had a bit of a chat about them in pre-interview.
Yeah, so with any meditative practice, and when I talk about the meditative arts, just so everybody that's listening is clear, I'm talking about any kind of practice, whether it be Tai Chi, Qigong, sitting meditation, standing meditation, yoga, any kind of a meditative practice where you're working with movement or breath or postures to bring yourself to that kind of center state of awareness or focus. And so when you're doing a meditative practice, we have what we call the five regulations: regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. Regulating the body is the easiest one to understand. And it's the idea, like, think about, if you're sitting at your desk at a computer and you're sitting there for 4 or 5 hours and your shoulders start to roll forward and you start to feel tired and get maybe a stiff neck or whatever, it's very depleting on your energy because your body is not erect, it's not hold with proper alignment. And you're breathing shallowly because you're not holding the right posture, your lungs aren't being effective. Because of this posture, it can be very draining. But say the same thing happens and the most important person in your world walks in the room, you're going to perk up, your body's going to be strong, and think about your energetic state in that
Mm,
moment.
mm,
Well, regulating the body is one of the easiest things we can do with our meditative practice. In a
yeah.
fairly short amount of time, maybe a 2 or 3 month window, if you're focused on this, we can integrate this body regulation into everything we're doing. And that one piece of the puzzle will make a big difference in your overall energetic state and your presence in anything that you're doing. Then we have regulating the breath. And regulating the breath is a lifetime endeavor. It's something that you're going to be working on. Qigong is often referred to as the science of the breath, and there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies. We learn to use the breath to get different energetic outcomes. And there's literally, for an example of how we can break this down into two simple categories. A lot of times we refer to breathing strategies as yin methods or yang methods. Yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style of breathing meditations. Like if you
Right.
ever listen to somebody sleep, their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And that's the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. So if you're stressed or you're dealing with anxiety, we could do some of these yin-oriented breathing exercises to help bring that stress level down. Whereas on the flip side of that, if we're doing a yang style of breath, like maybe you had to push your car, you're picking up something heavy, your natural instinct is use the exhale side of the breath, maybe put tension in the breath, make the breath audible. And this helps generate power and energy. And this helps stimulate creativity. It's so when we start
Yeah.
learning how to use the breath, we can do this strategically to control our physical, mental, and emotional outcomes throughout the day, and is a
Mm,
very powerful tool.
I like
Then
that.
we have then we have regulating the mind. And regulating the mind is, we've already kind of touched on it a little bit. There's a story that I once heard from one of my teachers who I really enjoy. It's about these two monks, and they're walking down this dirt road right after a rainstorm, and everything's really muddy. And they come up to this big, huge puddle. And on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful lady, and she's wearing a white dress and she's crying. The older monk, he says, "Ma'am, is everything okay? How can we help you?" And she says, I need to be somewhere and I can't get across this puddle without getting my dress all dirty. So he rolls up his sleeves and of his pants and walks across the puddle and picks her up, puts her on his back, carries her across the puddle, and she's off on her way. Well, they start walking down the road and they get a couple miles down, and the younger monk, he's just furious. And finally he says, "You know we're not supposed to touch ladies, and yet you did back there at the puddle." And the old man looks down at him and he says, "You're still thinking about that lady? I left her back there at the puddle." And when we talk about regulating the mind, we do this all the time where we'll have something negative happen to us and
Mm,
we'll start going down that road, and it might be, a minute, an hour, a week that we're still dealing with that negative momentum. Whereas if we could just let it go and learn how to come back to center
mm,
and find a more peaceful path, it can a lot of times take a lot of stresses out of our lives. And
yeah,
this is what
absolutely.
one of the ways we can use the regulating the mind.
Yeah.
Then there's there's regulating the energy. And regulating the energy is very easy if you have come to a solid foundation in the prior three with regulating the body, the breath, and the mind. Regulating the energy we do with different energetic circulations in the body, using different practices with our breath and our mental side of the training. And then lastly, we have regulating the spirit. And regulating the spirit is our overall morale, but it's also kind of like the end goal of a meditation practice or a qigong practice is often, you'll talk to a lot of serious monks who live the lifestyle, and they're working towards enlightenment, and in my entire career, I've been studying the meditative arts for over 30 years. I've never met anybody who I would consider enlightened. However, that's their goal. They're working towards that path. And while it is a huge feat to overcome, there are moments of enlightenment, and there are moments of things where you get those aha moments, which is kind of what we're talking about when we mean regulating the spirit.
Yeah. So each one of these sort of benefits the next. Is there a sort of an order to it? It seems like there might be a bit of a flow there.
Yeah, there is a bit of an order to it. However,
Mm.
I mean, you can focus on one without the other, but it is when you're building a practice around the meditative arts, it's good to have a grasp on what they all are.
So for someone going wanting to, put their toe in the water and such and find out a little bit more about these five regulations, what resources would you recommend they go to just learn it, understand a bit, and maybe therefore find some inspiration to delve in deeper?
Well, you could go to theyieldingwarrior.com, my website. We
Yeah.
have a online program there that goes into detail about this stuff and how to integrate a meditative practice into your life and actually cater it towards
Mm.
whatever it is you want to accomplish with the program. And then you could also go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book and get a free copy of my book. Just pay for shipping and handling. Those would be a couple good resources for you.
Nice. Appreciate it. Jeff, amazing conversation once again, very insightful, and really appreciate your time and your knowledge coming in here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Hope you've enjoyed it. Guys, check it out there at thehiddenwhy.com. I'll stick in the links there for the Yielding Warrior, also the book, Dao Di Ching, that Jeff mentioned in our interview. And yeah, check that out and enjoy. Reach out to Jeff if you have any further questions. I'm sure he'd be happy to connect. And have a great day ahead. Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Thank you.
Peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon.